Welcome back. Now, Gerry Brownlee wears two hats in the government. He's Christchurch Recovery Minister, and in that capacity, he's been on a peace mission there this week, meeting the new council headed by his old political opponent, Lianne Dalziell. And he's also Transport Minister. New census figures showing a big slowdown in growth in Auckland have come out, which raises some real questions about the future of Auckland's big ticket transport items. Gerry Brownlee joins us now from Wellington. Good morning, Minister. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning.
Now, I want to start out talking about Christchurch because you did meet with the new Christchurch Mayor, Lianne Dalziell. How did that meeting go this week?
Look, it went very well. I wouldn't describe it as a peace mission. There was not really a peace to make, but
well,
it was
there's been a bit of room for improvement there between the relationship between central government and local government in Christchurch, though.
Look, I think on a number of levels there were difficulties that are well understood around Christchurch City Council and its previous operations. But I would like to say that I always had a good relationship with Bob Parker. He did a great job taking us through the worst of the events and was a great communicator through that time. So, my optimism about a better relationship with the City Council certainly doesn't reflect on Bob.
OK, you have, though, sparred politically, I would say, with Lianne Dalziell over the years. Can you two, in essence, play nice dinner, even though you're on different sides of the political spectrum?
Oh, look, I think so. I mean, I've known Lianne a very long time, not only through politics, but the other connections as well. So I think there's no issue there. I think in many ways, her experience having been a Cabinet Minister, so knowing the systems that I work with, will be as much a help to her as it will be to the relationship. So I'm pretty optimistic about that. The other thing is, you can't doubt that she has a great commitment to the recovery phase now that we've got out of that sort of difficulty with so many demolitions and various other complicated aspects that had to be dealt with prior to getting into the recovery phase fully. OK. How
long do you think Doug Martin, in the capacity of a statutory manager, will continue to oversee the consenting process in Christchurch?
Oh, I think there's quite a time to go. They lost that accreditation for giving consents. There are various accords now being worked out between Christchurch City Council and other councils around because the bow wave, if you like, of consents that are coming through is just going to get bigger. At the moment, the waiting time is officially about 41 working days, 6 weeks, far too long. If there's any stop the clock in that, then it's a much longer period. So going forward, still a huge amount of work to do. I think Doug's done a pretty good job in there and clearly has a plan for improving things a lot more. And I'm sure that he'll be there for a while longer until we get to a more reasonable sort of position. OK, I want to talk about the issue of compulsory acquisition in Christchurch because you've acquired 9 sites, I think, in what's called the Eastern Frame. Central City landowners are frustrated, though. They say you haven't given them a fair price. How do you respond to that? Well, in actual fact, we've negotiated the purchase of over 150 sites. What we have had to do for getting that last property around an anchor project is make some compulsory acquisitions.
OK.
Now, right from the start, that's always been an option. It's legislated for. It's a particular process that is enshrined in the recovery legislation. And throughout those negotiations, everyone always knew that was the drop-dead position. What actually happens is once the Crown compulsorily acquires that property, negotiations, discussions still continue. In the end, from this point, it comes to the Minister to make a decision about a price.
There were 9 requests made, though, for the valuations, for full valuations, and that was denied under the Official Information Act because it was considered commercially sensitive.
I missed you. I missed that start.
There were 9 requests made for full valuations of those sites that were acquired and under the Official Information Act, and that was declined because that was deemed to be commercially sensitive. Why can't people access, if you like, the valuation process that has gone through?
Don't confuse a valuation process with what is commercially sensitive information. And people will put a construction on it to suit the position they're taking. But we've negotiated in good faith with well over 100 owners, approaching 150, I believe, owners and concluded sales. We have 2 things happening at the moment. A group of people saying we want to be paid a lot more, and another group actually saying the price we're paying is too much, and that price that we're paying will hinder a recovery in the long term. So we've got, I think when you've got the two sides and two extremes of an argument like that, and you find yourself in the middle, you're in about the right place. But remember, it's 9 out of a very, very large number of properties.
Are you confident with the speed, if you like, of the rebuild at the moment?
Look, everyone would like things to go more quickly. One thing that is causing me, probably the only thing that's ever caused me to sort of lose sleep a bit in the whole of the last 3 years, is the stalling of decisions for a number of houses, 500 homes on the Port Hills. We've got stopped in our tracks a bit by a court decision recently, which we're appealing. We need to get all that tidy before we progress, so we don't find ourselves in contempt of the court. But that is extremely hard on those people, and I want to, for what it's worth, I acknowledge that, but it doesn't make any difference to their circumstances.
It does seem, though, that a good deal of the country's growth, if you like, in the economic forecast, and we just touched on this a moment ago with Colin James, that 4.1% in the final quarter of last year that's being predicted, that's hinged largely to the Christchurch rebuild. So are you under a little bit of pressure as well, you know, maybe from Bill English to get things cracking along there?
Oh, look, no, Bill's got a very good program running throughout the country. There's no question about that. What I think is interesting at the moment is that you've got approaching 7% growth in the greater Christchurch, Canterbury region, but you've also got record export volumes going out of the port of Littleton and through Christchurch Airport. So there is something happening in our productive base as well, over and above the import of materials and other such, and capital that's going into that rebuild. So a pretty promising picture coming out of Canterbury, but also, of course, the economy is in good shape across the country, with the predicted 2-3%, we would hope, growth becoming more of a norm as we go into the future.
Could it get too hot in Christchurch?
No, I think the structures we've got in place, so the Fletcher's EQR office run through EQC, and also the way in which the private insurers have structured their PMOs, project management officers, will see a degree of constraint that could have run away on us. It has done internationally in other situations, but we're well on top of that. In addition to that, you're starting to see quite a bit of competition around materials, and it's not uncommon to hear that people are getting extremely good deals on steel fabrication and everything else. And one of the interesting things is that industry is probably running only throughout the country at a bit over 50% of capacity. So lots and lots of room to soak up more work yet. There
are still issues, though, around insurance, aren't there? There's still, you know, you touched on the Port Hills and other issues. There are still insurance companies dragging their feet. What are you doing about that? Because you've racked up insurance companies before. What are you doing about it now?
Well, we're in constant contact with insurance companies. Two of the companies effectively have around about 60% of the over-cap residential difficulties. And so that's firstly Southern Response, which is owned by the government. They can report that 96% of their claims are either settled, being settled, or in discussion. And I think that's a pretty good position to be in. IAG, I'm sure, could speak for themselves, but I think we are seeing the sort of movement that we would have expected. And the other thing is that some of the innovation that's coming into foundation design and the way in which you can reconstruct is also coming to the fore in a pretty strong sort of way. So, yep, everyone, as I said at the start, wants things to go more quickly, but at the same time, I think it's often forgotten just how big this disaster was.
Right, let's talk about transport now, because we've had the census out, and I want to touch in particular on transport in Auckland, because did the census reveal anything to you that might make you rethink some of your transport planning in Auckland?
Well, I think the most salient point is that some of the planning that was done through the Auckland Transport Agency and the Auckland City Council was predicated on a much bigger and faster growth in Auckland over the period to 2030 than appears to be the case. But look, I've got to say personally, I'm always cautious about that, because I think, demographic planning can be, upset by any number of events along the way. I have in the back of my head, I once researched a 1950s figure for what New Zealand would look like in the year 2000, and they were predicting that we might hit 2 million people and we'd be largely living in the rural hinterland around a couple of big cities. That never came to pass, and I think You've just got to keep on being in a place where you're assessing the needs. We haven't wanted to progress at the same rate as the Auckland City Council. We've made that very clear. And we've said to them that, you've set some criteria for what you expect around the city rail link, for example, and if we start to see that coming to fruition, we'll go sooner. But we have made that commitment to 2020. And look, similarly with the second harbour crossing, it would be, I think, very naive to think that Auckland eventually isn't going to be much bigger and that crossing will be needed. We've got a very broad timeline for that, out to about 2030. So I don't think we should upset too much of that consideration at this stage, but some of the more detailed planning may well be pushed off as a consequence of lower population growth.
So basically the fact that Auckland hasn't grown at the speed that was predicted, that throws into question the viability of the inner city rail loop and the second harbour crossing.
Well, just be careful. I think when you say hasn't grown at the rate expected, there was a degree of catch-up in those projects as well, because there's been growth over a period of years where perhaps infrastructure hadn't kept up with the needs. So there's a balancing point there. But look, we'll see what happens as the Waterview connection comes on stream in a few years, 2017. We expect that to make a big difference. We've outlined a number of other projects that we think would make a good impact on the flow of traffic through Auckland. But those two big projects, we've committed to 2020 for the start of the rail loop, and sooner if the circumstances change. Right. It now appears that they won't. And of course, as I said, at some point, that other harbour crossing will be required, and we shouldn't slow down that planning process on this basis, because you are in the end only talking about a start date and a conclusion date, and to be planning through the years that we've got is an important thing.
Okay, you met a delegation in August to discuss the issue of regional roading, and we've covered the issue of roads of national significance and things a lot on this program. That delegation said to you they wanted more money for the regions. What are you going to do about that?
Well, that's because the current funding arrangement runs out or stops at the end of next year, I believe, or partway through next year. The funds that aren't used in that, there are a number of areas that haven't used all their funds, Southland, Taranaki, Nelson. They'll be able to keep those funds out till 2018. But clearly we have to have something to replace that, and we're looking at just what sort of a shape that might be at the present time. More money, do you think? Well, they have had money, and the regions all get money now through the National Land Transport Program for local roads and public transport and a range of other things as well. So that would continue. The R funds were an attempt to get to create an opportunity for regions to have a greater say on some complementary projects around NCTA's work. And I think that is desirable, that we have something that replaces that. But I'm not in a position to announce this morning exactly what that is. Well, that's a great shame, Mr Brownlee, but I appreciate you coming in and joining us this morning. Gerry Brownlee, Minister for Christchurch Earthquake Recovery and Transport. Thank you. Thank you.